It's the only global international organization that deals with rules of trade between nations. One country's comparative advantage is another's dire need. So the World Trade Organization is at the heart of negotiations, agreements, and other details that will help producers of goods and services, exporters and importers conduct their businesses. So to have Nigeria's former minister, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, as the first African and the first woman to head the affairs at the WTO is certainly a thing of pride for the country. But beyond the delight, there's work to be done, both for Dr. Okonjo-Iweala, which is from settling the trade issues like the fishery subsidies to sealing agreements and terms of trade, while for Nigeria, exploring the opportunities inherent in its natural resources by adding value for trade. Well, this is our focus on this episode of Special Report. You're welcome. I'm Ini John Mekwa.
I, as General Council Chair, supported by the facilitators, thereby recommend formally that the General Council agree to appoint Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala of Nigeria as the next Director General of the WTO, starting on 1st of March 2021 until 31st August 2025. It is so agreed.
History was made on the 15th of February 2021 when Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was confirmed as the 7th Director General of the World Trade Organization in a race that started with the nomination of 8 candidates by their respective government to succeed the then Director General, Mr. Roberto Azevedo.
WTO members are making history. For the first time in the 73 years of GATT and WTO, you are selecting a woman and an African as Director General. This is groundbreaking and positive. I'm grateful for the trust you have in me, not just as a woman and an African, but also in my knowledge, experience, and as some of you have said, courage and passion to work with you to undertake the wide-ranging reforms the WTO needs to reposition itself for the future.
Morning, how are you all? Thank you.
After a long race and process, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala assumed office on the 1st of March as the first woman and first African to be the Director General of an organization with over 160 members representing 98% of the world trade and over 20 countries desiring to join the WTO. She has a renewable term which expires on the 31st of August 2025 in the only global international organization which deals with the rules of trade between nations.
The challenges facing the WTO are numerous and tricky, but they are not insurmountable. There is hope. There is light at the end of the tunnel if we work together in a transparent manner that builds trust, builds bridges, diffuses political tensions, and encourages convergence. The pandemic and its economic fallout have highlighted the interdependence of countries, the importance of multilateralism, and the need to strengthen collaboration to achieve fair and balanced trade agreements that provide opportunities for all WTO members, particularly for the least developed countries and small island states. By working together, we can build that trust, and we can achieve a stronger, more relevant and inclusive trading system.
For their role in our success, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala returns home to show appreciation.
Thank you. Yeah. It's so nice.
What we're trying to do is indeed Nigeria's share of trade in Africa. We hope to be able to use the African Continental Free Trade Agreement to improve our trade. And to do that, of course, we have to improve investments. We have to add value to some of our products. We have this Continental Free Trade Agreement is a unique opportunity for us to be able to engage commercially with the other nations in Africa, and that will boost exports. And then when you boost exports, you create more jobs. We're also going to talk about the digital economy and how young people are accessing the internet
for e-commerce. So those are some of the issues. What more can we do to support all of that and generate more activity?
As part of her thank you tour, a visit to the chief host, President Muhammadu Buhari, who welcomes her and holds a meeting with her. Apart from the gratitude, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala seized the opportunity to share helpful tips on the outlook and plans ahead. She dispels fears that embracing the free trade policy of the WTO would harm Nigeria's economic diversification plan. The DG preferred that duties should be applied to imports to prevent the country from becoming a dumping ground, emphasizing that the World Trade Body is strategically working towards a deliberate policy to support women.
There are some economies in the world that thrive or cannot thrive without free trade. There are others, like Nigeria, that have the ability to produce and manufacture their own products. And of course, with their provisions, if you need for a period of time to be able to manufacture and produce, there are certain principles, special and differential treatment. That's what is called at the WTO, that you can draw on. This allows a developing country to have a longer time period to implement some of the WTO agreements, giving it a chance to what is called policy space to be able to develop whatever industrial manufacturing it wants to develop. Of course, this is not forever, because eventually you need to open it up to competition. Otherwise, you'll be developing inefficient industries. We have something at the International Trade Center called She Trades, which aims to support women to improve their trade and get into the value chain, regional, national, global, and regional value chains. The micro, medium, and small enterprises, Nigeria is actively participating right now in some negotiations that are ongoing to reach an agreement on how we can better support micro, medium, and small enterprises. Since our economies in Africa, many of them have informal enterprises, have very small enterprises.
She also adds that the world is moving towards renewables, urging Nigeria to tap into this opportunity in order to shore up her foreign exchange earnings. The WTO boss also visited two ministries, the Ministry of Trade and Investment as well as Foreign Affairs, where she pledged to work with international businesses to improve the quality of products exported from Nigeria.
We have to start moving towards more manufacturing. We have to start looking to add value to the products we now have. Why is that important? This is so that we can create more jobs and trade more. You can trade more if you produce more and add more value. Let's not export our jobs to the outside. So these were the issues we have in agriculture. I just gave Mr. President the example of shea butter and sesame seed. Nigeria is one of the largest producers in the world, and you know these are used for cosmetics. So the WTO, together with the International Trade Center, came here to work with women and men in a cooperative, Ifedapo, a cooperative in Shaki, in Oyo State, to try to improve the quality of their product. 200 metric tons initially they produce, now 500 metric tons more. This is the kind of thing that WTO can do, working with the ordinary man and woman in order to improve their standard of living and increase their incomes.
Aside appreciating the government for the contribution to her emergence as the 7th Director General of the multinational organization, Dr. Okonjo-Iweala also discusses how the country can leverage on her position for economic growth. According to the WTO, Nigeria's share in world trade is 0.33%, while her share in African trade is 19%. This is an area government is negotiating to improve upon. Next up for her, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Here, she promises to engage international financial institutions to solve the country's infrastructural deficits. The government is hoping that her appointment will scale up Nigeria's contribution to international trade, and that Nigeria is to start transitioning its economy into other areas or risk having no additional foreign exchange in the nearest future. She also met with the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustapha, where she promised that the global trade body would work to reduce export restrictions for medical supplies among member states, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Trade is very instrumental in access to medical supplies and equipment, because how do they get from one place to the other? It is through trade. And part of the challenges we've had in this pandemic is the fact that some of our member countries have put export restrictions on the movement of medical supplies, equipment, and even supplies to make vaccines. So one of the things the WTO can do is to work with members to reduce these export restrictions. If you take vaccines, for instance, I'll just give you one number from the manufacturer of Pfizer, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. We had a meeting with manufacturers a couple of days ago in Geneva, and their representative said that it takes 280 components to manufacture their vaccine. And it's in a supply chain that involves 19 countries. So the supply chains for many of our products, medical products, are global. And so when a country puts export restrictions on one, it means that you slow the production everywhere. That's where the WTO comes in, because we have certain rules that members should abide by with respect to these restrictions, and we play a fundamental role in making sure that medical supplies and equipment and vaccines circulate.
I believe with all these resourceful persons holding these very, very strategic offices, you bring your wealth of experiences to bear in helping us back at home recalibrate our entire developmental efforts. COVID-19 has come with a lot of, I always say it came with a lot of adverse effects and impacts, but it also provided an opportunity for us to really go back and look at our system. The good thing about COVID-19 is that it has exposed the weaknesses of all systems. Even the most established democracies and economies have been brought to their knees by the adverse effects of COVID-19. But I think the developing economies stand to benefit if they learn from the lessons of these adverse impacts and look at their systems, their governance system, their economic foundations, and the need to heighten inclusion in the way we develop our agendas and our programs.
In the area of vaccine, the DG asked Nigeria to urgently set a facility towards vaccine manufacture because COVID-19 would not be the last pandemic.
Right now, for vaccines, if we get a waiver of the TRIPS, we'll not be able to produce one single dose. I've been in the vaccine business now for the past 5 or 6 years as chair of Gavi, so I know a little bit about that business. You need 4 to 5 years to get a factory, a plant approved, or more, to produce vaccines because of the delicate nature. So I said, but we need them. So let's focus on trying to increase the volume of manufacturers now. For those countries in emerging markets and developing countries that have some capacity that can be turned around to produce more vaccines on voluntary license, like India is doing at the Serum Institute. They're producing 1 billion doses. Why can't we do that? If South Africa has some existing capacity, why not? There's some in Senegal. I'm actually advocating that Nigeria should start looking now at establishing the manufacture and production of vaccines for the future. This is not going to be the only pandemic. And we don't want next time to be looking around for where we are going to get. So let us focus on very pragmatic approaches on increasing volume whilst we are still discussing the TRIPS. Because for the next pandemic, We now need to look at the flexibilities under the TRIPS and see whether it will be sufficient so that next time we are not arguing, developing countries can just produce. So walk and chew gum now, and then down the line, get the agreement. That's the way I'm going. Thank you.
Following the Central Bank of Nigeria's ban of foreign exchange at the official rate for milk import, there are indications that the European Union has reported the development to the World Trade Organization, saying it distorts the balance of payment protocol. At a meeting with the Central Bank Governor, the WTO Director General, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, says that the dispute can be resolved through its trade remedies, which provides for the protection of local industries without an outright ban.
As DG WTO, I have to raise this about the issue of the BOP. We have a complaint against us by the EU about the use of the violation of the balance of payments agreement with respect to trying to protect the dairy industry. And they feel that this is not the right instrument. So as DG WTO, I have to make this known. But this is an issue which you have said you would like to engage on in a little more detail, so we can discuss that later and how to go about it.
I thank you, Madam DG, in helping to resolve what I call some of the weaknesses that we find in the promotion of Nigeria's export. Shea butter, sesame seeds, gum arabic, and the rest of them. It might interest you, Madam DG, that Nigeria would be the largest producer of sesame seeds. I mean, sesame seeds and even shea butter. And I know here in Niger State, shea butter seeds, right? They drop. When they mature, they drop and people throw them away. And Nigerians have been trying as much as possible to see how can we improve standards, quality, so that we can even export them and make money. What we have seen in Nigeria before your intervention is that our own shea butter is taken from Nigeria through the borders and taken to one of the, I don't want to mention it, one of the West African countries, and they say that the ones who produce these shea butter seeds. So those are the things where we need to think of how can we open up Nigeria. We need your help in these areas.
She assures the Central Bank Governor that trade remedies operated by the body can help facilitate the growth of local industries.
Services, a very important source. We saw that Wizkid and Burma Boy won prizes, and I want to congratulate them because they're exporting Nigeria's music and talents abroad, and people are buying this. We have music, we have art, we have movies. Everywhere I go abroad, people, the diaspora of Africans keep talking about how Nigerian movies, they love them. So we should not neglect the creative industries because they create a lot of jobs for our young university graduates. And we must see how we can support these areas. Another is e-commerce. This is now, the digital economy is here to stay. And actually, our young people are doing well there. I've been giving the example of Flutterwave that was recently invested in a fintech payment platform that has been invested in and is valued at hundreds of millions of dollars now. But it's not the only one. We have other young people who are doing things in technology. And this is the kind of thing we need to support our young people to make use of the digital economy.
Her meeting also included one with the private sector. She tells the business owners that a trade body can assist micro, medium, and small enterprises with capacity building.
I'm excited by the opportunities open to our economy, to you, the private sector, to our women and young people. The WTO can help with policy support, capacity building, and specific targeted support to micro, medium, and small enterprises. But the bulk of the challenge lies with you and with government. Policy reform, implementation, investment, and inevitable cost corrections remain firmly in the hand of Nigeria and Nigerians. As Martin Luther King said, change does not roll in on the wheels of inevitability. but comes through continuous struggle. Let us never give up this struggle for Nigeria's future and the future of our young people.
Right now, the biggest challenge that we have is that regional markets are not really properly working. They work to a certain extent, but a couple of them, you see 1 or 2 naughty countries that are not following the rules. I'm sure Foreign Minister knows what I'm saying. So I think we need quite a lot of help in that sector. And you are right. Like us, we are not only, people talk about us doing farming, but we are not only doing the farming, we are doing also petrochemicals, which is oil-based. So as we progress, the less oil that is being demanded by the system will keep reducing the oil production to now petrochemicals. But there's now new technology to produce petrochemicals from oil, from even crude directly. SADC have actually done that, and we are going to look into that seriously. And by this quarter, most likely, or maybe early next quarter, Nigeria will be the largest exporter of fertilizer urea in Africa.
She also is challenging the women entrepreneurs to tap into the various interventions of government to boost trade, create jobs and income. She does this with a pledge that the World Trade Organization would assist women to connect to regional and international markets. Her agenda for the women, she says, includes harnessing the interventions of government to improve their livelihood, improve packaging and production of goods and services that can compete favorably in the international market.
McKinsey estimated a few years ago that if women had equal opportunity and access to the global economy as men do, economic growth and the quantity of GDP will increase by $28 trillion a year. Can you imagine what is being lost in the world by not tapping women adequately? And it's not only in Nigeria, there's a gap between the earnings of men and women. Globally, for every dollar a man earns, a woman earns 63 cents. We will do our utmost at the WTO and ITC to partner with you more. So we should really think, and what we want to do at WTO is help us think of how we can penetrate that market and take advantage. We didn't hear from anyone in the fashion industry today. I don't know if there are any of the women. But I tell you are? Okay. I'll tell you one thing that is constantly a challenge for me. Women in other African countries want our fashion. Very much. And we could take the whole continent. But for some reason, we have not been able to figure out how to penetrate this market. So I'm throwing you all a challenge now. We're ready to work with you. How is Nigeria going to take over the African fashion market?
My last assignment for her.
Statistics from the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women shows that the gender financing gap in Africa is about $42 billion, with men having the upper hand. But the Nigeria Export Promotion Council plans to introduce incentives to boost exports, especially for women.
Early on in my administration, we created a Women in Export division at NEPC, with women desk officers in all the regional and export assistant offices to provide institutional support and advisory services for women-owned businesses. With the ultimate goal of increasing the participation of women in trade, we also redesigned our exporter license form to allow us collect disaggregated data to help us identify women-owned businesses. For several interventions and programs have been carried out to build the capacity of women and increase their competitiveness in global export market.
Dr. Okonjo-Iweala concluded her official visit to Nigeria by addressing some of the key areas that her organization will be collaborating with the federal government on. Her visit is timely as the federal government is working on improving the economy, and some of her suggestions could prove vital to the government's plan.
As Dr. Okonjo-Iweala concludes her official visit to Nigeria, she begins to work at the World Trade Center, and the world is watching. While for Nigeria, this is an opportunity to leverage on the platform it presents to truly diversify her economy. Don't forget, you can always share your comments, your questions with us. We always would like to hear from you. That's it for this episode of the program. I'm Ini John Mekwa.